Esports Podcast, Noun. A 2-hour-long video full of banter and nonsense where the guests are only introduced halfway through and the outro makes you think your internet's died. Huh.
The first question I have about the Valorant stuff goes like this, Sean, right? It actually makes sense why you started out on broadcast side, because obviously if people don't know the timeline, you were actually doing CSGO broadcast talent. In fact, you were with me at Flashpoint when famously the world had to go online and the beta of Valorant dropped like almost exactly at the same time. It's like the timing. And if people don't know, because you didn't end up doing the Flashpoint event, you basically from almost day one of the beta, you and Dan, DDK, were just grinding the game immediately. I even thought, by the way, it's quite a clever approach, because if you want to be broadcast talent, if you're there from day one, and you've seen every meta, you're even the ones potentially like crafting the terminology and how people think about the game and model the game, which by the way is another thing. DDK loves all that shit too. That's exactly the sort of thing that turns him on in esports, right? This sounded like this could be a great broadcast career, but people might know it didn't last that long. It wasn't even that many years before now. Like at the moment you do some stuff every now and then again, but like there was the period in between when you did the coaching, right? Give me some thoughts. When you first came into Valorant, is it like I said, were you actually thinking like, hey, I'm going to get on this from day one on this? And the other thing is, was it even like, I'm going to be full-time Valorant? Were you still thinking I'm still in CSGO and we'll see? Because to be fair, since we only just went online, remember, I know it's a meme now, but they did tell us it was only 2 weeks. They did say 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Like we all did think, all right, cool, in a month then it'll be all like, no one could know, obviously it'd be like a year and a half or whatever. So at the time, was the idea like, I'm actually going to go all in on Valorant? Were you still thinking you were 1 foot in CS? What were you thinking at the beginning?
Yeah, so like, that time frame was so weird. Like when it comes to like risky choices, there was the one to like drop out of my master's program. The second would be like the Valorant launch. I'll never forget like, yeah, those COVID days where we were going into Flashpoint and I had a newborn at home. So no one knew what COVID was.
No one knew.
Like it was like, there was so much fear and like uncertainty about what it could be or how it would affect people or kids. And like, I didn't know. I was just like scared that I had a newborn at home. And I remember talking with like you guys and we all had like access to the Valorant alpha. And I hadn't even played it. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm a one game Gary. Like I just literally play fucking one game. I haven't played Minecraft ever in my life. I've never played fucking like all of these fucking weird ass games. Like I just don't play them. I just play like whatever I'm very interested in. I dive in very deep. But I played the last day of alpha because I think like maybe like talking to like you and Monty said like he thought the game was pretty good and he had faith in her eyes. So I'll like load it up. I'll download it or whatever. Like I've had access this whole time. I just haven't done it. And I played it and I ran around and I was like, what the fuck? The movement feels exactly like CS 1.6 to me. This is what I remember 1.6 movement feeling like. And I was like, I just fell in love with that. Like that alone was like, oh, Volcano's working on this shit. And like, he made it feel a little bit like old school CS. And I loved that. And I knew immediately, like from playing it, how it felt that it would be a big game. I had no idea like about Riot's marketing or anything like that. All I know is that like I was very scared with the whole COVID thing. I didn't want to like get COVID, bring it back home to my daughter. So I said like I wasn't comfortable going in. And then ended up streaming Valorant like throughout beta, like at home. And this was the time when like everyone had like the beta drops like on their channels. Like DDK had like beta drops on his channel. And everyone was trying to get their key by joining these streams. And I didn't have that. So like I had like 40 viewers, whereas like, you know, like everyone that had beta drops had like 1,000 viewers. Like everyone was trying to get a key back then. It was like a hot commodity. And I just grinded it really hard. And then my stream kind of blew up and I was like averaging like 2K concurrents. And I didn't even know if I wanted to be broadcast talent at the time. And then I just kind of worked like a couple events. DDK asked me if I wanted to cast. And how DDK approached casting like made me fall in love with casting. Like I'd casted stuff in CS, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And then he taught me like a lot about like delivery between like play-by-play and colorcaster. And he taught me how to like give space to one another, like when to insert dead space. And it was just so scientific. And I just loved it. I loved like ending a cast, loading up, like, this is so stupid of me to even do this, I know, but like I would load up Reddit and I would read the comments.
Just get the ego boost. Yeah, of course.
I just loved, like, it felt like I had like some level of like fucking mind control when I was casting. Like the narratives that I would see on the subreddit were like, I was like, bro, this person only thinks this because of what I said in round 4. Like what? But it was fun to have like control over the product to teach people. Like I'd always liked teaching people things, and I felt like I was doing that on a cast, which I never thought people would enjoy, but people really did enjoy it in Valorant. And so I absolutely fell in love with it. It was my biggest passion. And when I was casting in those days with Dan, my only goal was to win. And this is fucking stupid too, but I wanted to win that award, like Color Caster of the Year.
Oh, right. The esports award. Right. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just like a goal I'd set. And I know like, it doesn't even really like matter. Like, well, I wouldn't feel anything. I wouldn't feel like accomplished had I won it, but like it was just like a minor goal I had set. And I had my eyes set on that. I was working like really hard with Dan to like polish up my casting. And then, you know, in those early days of Valorant, I think they were just testing a lot of things. They were trying to save budget in certain areas. I didn't get hired to work Masters Reykjavik, which was like the first event of the year. And for those that don't know, in CS, like there's not many Valorant events a year.
No. There's like 2 or 3 back then, especially. Yeah.
There's like 2 Masters events and the championship. And when I wasn't hired for that, I was just like devastated. I was like, I can't win this fucking award. Like, I can't get money. So it's like when you're broadcasting.
It's also got to feel like, you know, what are you doing with your career? Like, if there's only 2 events a year and you don't get one, it's like, what was I doing the last 4 months, right?
Yeah. So like that was really devastating to my mental. And I had always had these like opportunities for more money that I was passing up. Like a lot of GM offers in Valorant, a lot of coaching offers in Valorant, even playing offers in Valorant, because I was playing the game so much and streaming it that I was getting offers to like IGL and play on like a lot of these top level teams back then.
I've heard actually people who were CS:GO in-game leaders got 1 million offers, because that was the role that like is the weakest in the game, right? Everyone sees how the FNSs of the world do, and everyone wants the CS:GO people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I was getting a lot of offers back then, and I was turning them down because I had like my heart set on this thing. And when I wasn't hired, I just felt so many like emotions. Like I didn't know how to handle it. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like I was willing to work the event for free. Like but nothing was going to change it. And that kind of broke my heart and made me move away from it. And that's when I went into coaching.
Right, here's what I'll do. I'll ask it in a very careful way, and you decide what you answer, right? The problem is Sean, which is when you and DDK were casting together, I actually low-key think Riot missed a trick completely, mate. Like, I think you actually, for real, could have been considered one of like the all-time great. I'm not talking about just fucking Valorant. I think you could have been one of the best duos ever in esports commentary, because I actually think you had the most unique setup of any commentary duo I've ever seen, bro, which is normally commentating is all about having the sick play-by-play, and that's what they're famous for. It's like the iconic, you know, Anders, fucking Sadikist, what, you know, you think of like those voices immediately, you just think of the calls. But normally, most casting duos is more like, right, where does the colour come in this? Do I have a colour? Like, people don't know, Anders and Semler essentially is no colour. They're sort of like mixing a little bit of colour in with 2 awesome hype casters. So yours was like the opposite. It was like 2 people who come from being like, in theory, potentially quite dry colour guys, to like, you both then worked on your skill set, and obviously DDK had done 1 million games anyway, so he could do play-by-play if he needs to. And I actually thought by the end it was amazing, because it was like having, essentially, this is like actually the dream of what me and Lopez used to talk about way back in the day on bloody Skype, when we would watch like old 1.6 tons. We always used to say the problem with the play-by-players, all the noobs love it, but if you're actually like hardcore in the game, you don't even listen to the play-by-play. If anything, he's almost distracting you. It's why people are mean and say they mute it. But the dream always for me was have 2 experts, have 2 people who know the game super deep, and then if you know how to give each other space, you could get so much more info into a cast, because you know this from being on the analyst desk. The analyst desk is like one good minute. Like you don't really have a lot of stuff. It doesn't matter how good the game was. You write all these bloody notes, and you just chuck them in the bin and say like 2 points, don't you? And that's if the other guy doesn't say something you riff off. In a game, a cast, you have like 3 hours. You can get all the influence. So I actually thought like what the potential for this duo was incredible. But as you say, for whatever reasons with the industry shenanigans, it didn't happen, and you were sort of getting broken up. And now neither of you sort of do that. Like you do the odd event. Like, doesn't that feel like a missed opportunity? Like am I over romanticizing? Did you not see the same potential?
I don't know if I have like that. It's weird. Like, I wouldn't have said like we would have been the greatest casting duo ever. Like, I just hold so much respect for like the CS casting duos, and even like, you know, like Pansy and like Hypoc. Like, I think, and like Sideshow and Bren, like from Overwatch, like those guys are insane. Like, they're all insane. Like, I think I would never be able to surpass like, say, a Machine as a broadcast talent. I think he's fucking insane. He's so insane. Like, his verbal fluidity is just unreal, and like his camera presence is insane. But I will say, like, I was willing to learn, and I would study like Machine and Sponge cast. Like, I remember like oh, I love that, the way they delivered that, and like how they bounced off of one another, and how they kept the combo going, and like then how they like drew hype. And Dan and I even did like casting training for like up and coming game changers casters, where I was able to like study casting. So like that's
right. As in the actual techniques and stuff, not just like what you said, right? Because
if you're going to teach someone, you better know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, you can't just be winging it out there. And that was like very pivotal to like my understanding of casting. So I definitely did like put in the effort. And I definitely didn't half-ass it. But I think like it's just so different the way that esports has trajected that I totally understand. Like, I'm not upset about it. I just think like the way that esports is treated across the different developers, how do I say this, is they hold different values, right? Like, a CSGO cast or a CSGO tournament is run a lot different than a Riot tournament, where Riot is the developer of the fucking game, and they're also the tournament organizer. And all the developer of the game should care about is getting eyeballs on the game and having people want to watch the game. Whereas like CSGO, the actual developer doesn't run the tournament. The tournament organizer runs the tournament. So they have to make profit on this tournament. And it's not about the eyeballs on the tournament.
Yes.
It's about, can we make profit on the tournament? And I just think like how it's thought of in Valorant, like, and the effort that Riot puts in is it's so different. Like, I don't know. I understand now, like in hindsight, but at the time I was obviously like very upset about it. Like, it's a hard question to like answer. Like, if you want to ask, like, reframe it, I could probably approach it differently.
What do you think on the part I said about the fact that, like, as I say, I think you had a very unique duo, though, like the background you were coming from and the skill set, like, essentially, like, I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty sure she said this publicly. Believe it or not, dude, even though I'm with you, I think Pansy's for the fucking shit. She's actually someone who sometimes lacks confidence. Like, she thinks she's just got a great voice, and, you know, maybe she's waffling sometimes and she's waiting for the colour guy, you know, to say what really matters. Whereas I would always tell someone like that, we talk about, you're fucking killing it. But in your case, like I say, I feel like you could have been one of the few duos where essentially both people could just be dropping gems the whole time if you had it going right way. Because even though you've been very humble there, like, to be fair, Sean, the people you're comparing yourself to, like, the CS casters have done like bloody 70 lands together, mate. You've done like what, one land together? Like, it's not like you didn't really have the chops under your belt. Like, I'm talking if you'd have had the run, if you'd have had like a 5-year run, I think you could have been one of the best ever, mate.
Maybe. Yeah. I also full transparency, I got like very frustrated, I think, in that like year of casting, because we would get the big games in this COVID era, but the big games in NA were fucking like, the grand finals of these tournaments were like both teams had already qualified. And
so it wasn't that competitive, right? I see, right.
And it was like we were casting these fucking people just trolling, and that drove me insane. It was like, the semifinals that we weren't casting were better than the actual finals.
Right.
And then when we went to LAN and casted, and it was like my first time casting a Valorant LAN, I'll never forget this. I felt like the match ended. It was like Sentinels versus like Furia or some shit, like one of the Brazilian teams. And it was an awesome game, and I loved it. I was like, this is so sick. And we go into like the third map, and it's on Haven, and there's a fucking like tech pause because someone did like a glitch, and the whole narrative about the match then just becomes about like this fucking thing.
Oh, right.
Like,
As an asterisk on it, right.
yeah, it just felt like every big match that I casted in Valorant, like, was fucked in some kind of way.
So you got
like,
blue balls, then you casted. You never got the proper release.
Yeah. Like LCQ, we were supposed to cast LCQ, like America's LCQ. The whole event got canceled.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
We
yes.
casted like one game, and then we're like, all right, go home. Like, everyone go home. That's what my entire year felt like, and it was so deflating that like I just couldn't cast a big game. And even like this last Champions, you know, like Ball had COVID, so I stood in for him and casted with Doug. You know, like there just so happened to be a fucking hurricane, so there was no crowd. So like the one day I get to cast like the two fan favorites in this insane matchup with Doug, who's like a great play-by-play, like it just feels so weird because there's no crowd that day, but there's crowds every other day. Like, God damn it, I'm just so unlucky. I just feel unlucky with the whole casting thing. I don't feel like I deserve any kind of like opportunities or anything like that. I don't feel like I'm the best caster, but I do feel like I never really got a chance, I guess, to like showcase anything.
By the way, when you did then become the coach of 100 Thieves and make this lineup, right? The problem with this team, because I remember watching like and following this period of time, is like the results were like almost good enough, but not quite, if you know what I mean. Like there was potential, a lot of people were hyped, but even if you look at the team, it's like similar with the lineup. Like the lineup was a bunch of like actually gamble players. Like these weren't like all the established names. These aren't all the CSGO players and the Wash players and the legends. Like actually DDK and the org took a big gamble on some of these names, and quite frankly, some of them have worked out, but like later on, etc. Like when you had this team, right, one question I would have is this: how much say did you get in like the lineup of players? And when you came to be a coach, like was this essentially like, were you just like given a team and you just work with them? Was this your team? Did you pick some of them? How would you explain like the initial aspect of the coaching?
I had all to say. Yeah. So I basically like drove down to LA, because I live in Orange County, a little bit of a drive. And I stayed in a hotel, and you know, like went in for like 3 straight days. I had like 12 hours of calls day after day after day, and I basically having like hour calls with everyone in the scene.
Oh, okay.
Just like, this is what I want to do. This is what the practice schedule is going to look like. Are you comfortable with this? You know, like, what do you think of this player? What do you think of that player? What do you think of this role? What do you think of that role? And I'm just like, kind of like gauging their answers to see like, you know, like, is this the fit that I want? And the org helped by having like a lot of info about like, you know, like these are the initiators that are available. These are the controllers. These are the sentinels. These are the in-game leaders. And like, this is, you know, like, and it was very important to me that I had like 5 players that felt like they could voice their opinions and communicate, had insane skill, would buy into the things that I want them to do. And I had like an IGL that could call at a high level. So like I wanted like a Tom Brady to like my Bill Belichick, like to, you know, like just for lack of a better way to put it, like I needed all of these things. And I had built this team because we didn't have time. So first of all, we had to build the team in the middle of the season because Masters 1 had already happened. So this is Masters 2. In order to qualify for Champions, we needed to be in the top 2 of the points totals, I believe, in NA, maybe 3. And we had 0 points. Like the previous team had 0 points for half the year, but because, you know, like the roster changed. And we had to get rid of some like the bigger names on the team, like Hiko and Ethan, because of some like previous shit that happened. And yeah, like I had a lot of faith in these guys, and I tried to get like some players, but like they didn't jive well with the players that I wanted.
But you did try for some bigger names.
Yeah, but it was also like I said, it was in the middle of the year, so
Right, fair enough.
like they're signed like throughout the year. They're probably on contender teams already. The org tried to like get me to sign certain players, but like when I called with them, like it just wouldn't have worked. Like I don't want to like out anyone, but let's just say like some people would just refuse to play with young players, right? Like, and I had faith in myself to coach the team up. Like I had a lot of faith in myself. And
I mean, it sounds like you actually did this quite different to a lot of GMs and coaches, Sean, because normally a lot of people do fall in love with the big name or the really skilled player. It sounds like you were essentially looking for other things, like you say, like, do they want to play with this player? How diligent are they in practice? Do they vibe with your approach, right? Seems like these are higher priorities for you, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there wasn't a lot of opportunity though. So like I said, it was in the middle of the year, so we couldn't bring in anyone from like EMEA or Asia.
Oh, right.
Like just the complications of that, getting their like visas and everything, we couldn't have done it and played the matches. We needed to win immediately. So we had 3 weeks to practice after building the team. And like we immediately like played really well, I believe, in like the Masters 2 qualification. We made it to like playoffs. We had like a high seed. We ended up like falling out. It wasn't like too bad. Like it didn't feel like the end of the world because it felt like we played really well given how little time we had to play at that point. We were playing really well in scrims. We were constantly getting better, and we were willing to like pivot comps and do like all kind of things that other teams weren't willing to do at the time. But then, yeah, so I was just getting like so burned out. Like I was immediately getting like burned out with the whole thing. Just because, like I said earlier in this talk, like I wasn't willing to coach the team from home during boot camps. I believe that like everyone on the team needs to go through all of that shit together. And if you're not doing it, there's not going to be buy-in, and they're not going to respect you on the level that they respect each other. So I was traveling out to Dallas a lot. I felt like I spent most of my year in Dallas. I don't like Dallas. I don't like it at all. But teams boot camp there for the ping. And yeah, we ended up grinding. We won LCQ and go to champions, which is quite an insane feat considering we had like no points at the time. And then when we get to champions, on the second day, Derek gets COVID. On the fourth day, we all test positive besides Will. And we play FNATIC in the opening match. We beat them. Then we play DRX, and that was a weird game.
Close match. Like, could have won that.
That game was fucked though, because like 3 of us were still in quarantine in the rooms in the hotel, and like 2 of us were on the stage, which is so weird because like the second you enter those rooms, you lose your phones. Like there's no communication with the other people, and then all of a sudden they're just like, all right, they're doing the walkout. Okay, we're going live now. So it's
right. Holy shit. Fucking hell.
What the fuck? Like this was so like, it felt like whiplash. And then the last game was our first game ever on stage, which was the rematch against FNATIC.
Because you'd been isolated for the other games, right? I see. Right.
Yeah. It was just a really weird scenario. And with such like young, inexperienced players to be put in like the highest pressure situation for their first stage match was just so fucked. Like, yeah, I mean, like we looked a little shell-shocked that game, but yeah, that was my experience.
Right. Obviously, I'll phrase it like this because it's just sexier for the interview, right? If that hadn't happened, Sean, like say like no one gets ill, say you get out of the group, say, who knows, maybe you make a run, maybe you come out 4th at the Champions, so the World Championship 4th. If you'd had like a deep run or it'd been a satisfying run, would you still be a coach now? Like, was that a decider, do you think, the fact that it didn't go that well at the LAN? Would you have sort of put the burnout aside if you'd have had the big result, do you think?
I had a lot of talks with like TDK and Melk leading into Champions about how like I didn't think I'd be coaching like next year and that, you know, like I'd be done. But I did say, because I know how esports works, I was like, I'm not going to say definitively that I won't, because I know that winning solves everything. Winning solves everything in esports. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that like before Champions, like I kind of knew that like it just wasn't going to work. Like it was taking such a strain on like my mental health and like my time with family that like it didn't feel good, even though like I felt accomplished, even though like my competitive side was like thriving, like, and we were winning. It didn't feel good. Like it didn't feel good, like missing like important moments for my daughters and stuff like that. Yeah.
One thing actually that's more of an abstract, just general discussion point on Valorant, the esports game, I want to ask you about is it's something we talked about on that episode of Daring Minds, the Valorant show I do with G.O.A.T, where I'm going from memory here, but the gist of it was you told me, because essentially people don't know, I don't follow Valorant very much. I watch the odd like esports games like the Champions or something, but it's not a game I don't play. I'm not trying to be like hardcore in it. I'm just doing it more as a journalist, and that's why on that show people don't know I'm just a host. I'm not even trying to be like Thorin on that show basically. But on this show, essentially, so what I'm getting at is I sort of use that show as I think to myself, if like a noob's watching, I'm getting educated, so they're getting educated with me, as it were. So my job is just ask the right questions. One thing you explained that I thought was very interesting, quite a shrewd point, was you said that to you, one of the differences between CSGO and Valorant, because obviously everyone hard forces that comparison, not least because half the players who were pros of Valorant were CSGO pros, so it's an obvious thing to compare to. You said you thought one of the differences in how the meta plays in Valorant is that in CS, if people think of like the greatest team ever is Astralis, right? If people have to define what the main strength of Astralis was, it would go like this: don't make mistakes, and as a result of that, pick the right sort of high percentage player. Essentially, just play correctly. If you just play correctly and don't make mistakes, you'll win a lot of tournaments in Counter-Strike. You told me you think in Valorant it's almost the opposite. It's almost like you have to be proactive. You have to be willing to take the risk that could... Essentially, instead of playing like safe and conservative, you should sort of play quite ballsy potentially, or play to like a style. What would you say to... Have I butchered that? Would you say that there's kind of a divide like that for you?
Yeah, I said this from like almost like day one in Valorant, and I like actually feel more validated now than ever after watching like this last major. I think in CS, I always thought about it as like the team who wins is usually the team who makes the least mistakes. There are occasions where like star players just fucking shit on you and you make no mistakes and you just lose mechanically. That happens in both games. But when a top team plays a top team in CS, it's who makes the least mistakes, because it's the same utility, it's the same maps, it's the same shit. And it's all about understanding like timings and understanding like little small like meta things that you can adjust in CS and doing them well as a team. In Valorant, it's like I could play the next match, like say I'm like coaching again, like I could tell my players like, yo, this next match, we're about to lock in like 3 duelists. We're gonna lock in like Reyna, Yoru, and fucking like Phoenix. And we're about to do shit that the other team has never seen in their lives. Like the way we take this site is something that they've never experienced. There's no way they can prepare for it. There's no way they can see it coming. And we have an entire game plan that I've crafted up on VALORANT that, like we can practice for the next week. Like that can happen. And it's about, in Valorant, it's not about who makes the least mistakes. It's about whose plan is best and whose plan will like trump the other teams. Like if you're running mirror comps, it kind of feels a little bit more like CS. So say like Ascent feels like a little bit like CS because you see a lot of mirror comps there. But like across all the other maps and like watching Paper X, for example, you'll realize like, oh, the rules of Counter-Strike don't necessarily apply here. Like a Reyna Harbor like rushing you, like, and you're doing everything like fundamentally correct, but like the rotate can't get to this player in time, and they've never seen this scenario before in their lives, and there's like no way to practice it, right? Like there's no way to prep for it. Like that is a way that you win in Valorant. Like it's not the only way, but it's definitely something you can't. And I talked a little bit with I think like Safe and Boostio and like maybe in like Tens about this recently, where like you can be the best player in the world, like you can have the best coach, you can have the best IGL, you can go over every scenario. You can't prepare for everything in Valorant. You can't. You need to have 5 players that can react on the fly to all of the fucking nonsense on their screen, know how to communicate really, really quickly, like know how to problem solve like really quickly, And it's almost like because of all of that shit, like mechanics are like second fiddle. But if you want to like play another style, you can try to disrupt it. Like you can try to be like, well, we don't want all of that variance. So like we're going to take like random fights and timings like across the map. So that way we end up in like 4-on-4s, and we're cool with being on 4-on-4s because like if we're in the 5-on-5, like that feels like dog shit. You're like, I don't know. Valorant is so weird. There's like 1,000 ways to win a round. Whereas like in CS, I feel like, there's like a handful, and it's like, can you make no mistakes getting to there?
Yes. No, I mean, I would explain it like this, is if I have to explain to like a layman how the two games work, to me, Counter-Strike, the most obvious analog, Sean, is just American football, how the offense plays. Like, you sort of like, you have your set plan initially, but then, you do the snap, you post-snap, you read the defense, right? Here's the hole. Like you were saying earlier about how you were playing as an IGL yourself. Like, I'm gonna attack this point here because that's like, let's say like the left tackle's weak, right? That's the route we're going to run through here. Whereas if you go and you look at the Valorant approach, this is the part though where I feel like people shouldn't hard compare CSGO to Valorant, because the agent part makes the entire thing just nothing like it. Because think about it, right? Even Simple's character is the exact same character as yours character or Zipnix's character. You're just playing it differently. In the game of Valorant, like, it's massively different what agent you have and if your player's good on that agent and what you comp. Like you say, it's not even now the agents, now it's the comp that we make out the agents. And then it's not even just the comp. Does that work? How does it get countered by the opponent's comp? It's like, I feel like the layers of like creativity and potential variables are insanely more. Whereas to me, the reason I give the example of the American football one is, to me, one of the beauties, but it also can be a downside also of Counter-Strike, is even if you kind of know what I'm going to do in Counter-Strike, if I'm Astralis and I perfectly execute it, it probably still works. That's one of the beauties of Counter-Strike. It's why so much is about like hard practice and set playbook stuff. Whereas if I look at Valorant, it feels like people actually, like you say, within a single tournament, people are bringing out stuff they've never done before, or they're coming up with a brand new, like, I'm going to put this agent in the game, even though no one does it at the moment. Like, what does that side appeal to you? I feel like you must enjoy that part. It feels like it must itch something a little bit. You must scratch the itch, right?
Yeah, like I said, like my style of in-game leading always had like a bit of innovation in it. So like I loved that aspect of Valorant where I felt like I could innovate and do things that, like no one else has done or even thought of before. To compare the two though, like imagine you're playing CS like on T side of Mirage, right? Like you can start the round, and the way I would call is like, well, that, like someone has to be accountable for like connector, someone has to be accountable for window, someone has to be accountable for cat, B, A main, and A palace. Like, like these are all things that must be done. So typically, like back then, teams would fall into like 1-3-1s, or they play like aggro on A. And if they play aggro on A, their mid is weak. Like you can decipher these really, really quickly. Like if you get like just a bit of info from them and you know how to react, right? In Valorant, it's like, bro, we don't know if like fucking B has like 2 kill trips from a Cypher that's playing market and like a fucking cringe camera that like we'll never see, like that tells them if we go up cat, and then they have this planned retake. So in the meantime, they're just like 4 stacking A. Like this literally happens all the time in Valorant, where like a sentinel will have like full info and control of a massive area of the map, and the other team is so unaware. Like they're so unaware, and they can't figure it out, and they don't know why they keep running into stacks. And like, yeah, that aspect of Valorant is a little bit triggering, because you can't account for it all. Like you can't. Like it's just simply impossible. And if you prod it out and try to feel like everything out on the map, you're going to die. And you're using too much utility to do all this nonsense that you're just playing right in the other team's hands. So like,
oh, so wait a minute, just to clarify, it's almost like even more extreme. Like essentially the joke is someone like Astralis would actually be punished if they played Valorant. Because like you say, if you actually did everything right, like you played it all by the book and check every corner, it'd probably fuck you, right? You have to sort of gamble a bit.
Yeah, you have to gamble a little bit, and you have to like understand like what's most common, like with certain agents. And I guess like over time you start realizing that. But when like the thing about Valorant is like, it also has a 7-map pool, but the difference is the developers like constantly like shuffling like 2 maps out, putting 2 maps in. New agents are coming in the game, like abilities are being updated, the guns are being updated. Like the devs are like so active on like changing the game itself that like metas only last like a short amount of time.
Like one tournament sometime, right? Yeah.
Like the Valo plants and stuff that I created when I was on 100 Thieves, like wouldn't be viable today probably. You know, like maybe some of them would get some rounds, but they wouldn't be the top teams.
Right, being as one of the things that everyone told me when I first started doing some Valorant content, privately and publicly, is they all told me, Sean, that the one area that Valorant is ridiculous is because of how powerful the abilities are when the agents are broken, like Jet, fucking Chamber, the really ridiculous ones we all remember. They told me that, like, they said basically, if you could ever get someone who was like the skill level of like Simple or Hiko or Zewu, they say like in Valorant they would be like the most OP carry of all time, because like people know on the Jet, it's like the best way it was described to me was, imagine if Simple could run in the site, kill someone, then like dash out and not be shot, and then it's like he doesn't even have to like re-pick out. And similarly the Chamber one, that's like you kill someone at one site in CS, then teleport to the other site and you're there for that. Like you can imagine if you're a CS fan already, you're like, what the fuck? Like, here's my question for you. One, have they exaggerated that? And then two, if you could actually pick a CSGO star and you were going to put them in Valorant, who would be like an awesome person who could have like abused the fuck out of like some of the OP agents? Who would you pick? Who would be your dream person to have come over?
Yeah, so I don't fully like agree with that at this point. There were early stages in the game where I think like players from CS could have transferred over and shit on people. But now there's just too many interactions. Like the game is so fucking complex and it's only getting more complex. Like the level of interactions from like a duo of agents or even like a trio, like it would take an immense amount of time and effort to learn that. And like the zoomies in Valorant, they're like so focused on these like aim trainers and like doing all this crazy shit. Like it would be very hard to like surpass something like that. But if there was ever anyone to do it, I would say Simple, because I think not anything to do with his skill, but just to do with his personality and what I've seen from him. Like I have seen this guy in a fucking prac room in a random tournament that like, you know, like tournament after tournament, he's the only guy playing. When every pro is like eating dinner or like wants to go out and sightsee and do this and do that, like Simple was one track minded as fuck. And he put every second into being the GOAT. And that's why he was the GOAT and he is the GOAT. Yeah. Like he literally was willing to sacrifice everything for that. And I know he would do it in Valorant. It has nothing to do with like his skill or like his like, which is obviously insane. Like honestly, those things are insane. But like the sheer amount of like time and effort that Simple has put into becoming the greatest is like unmatched. It's insane. It's insane to me that I saw someone on top of the world statistically doing things that I could never imagine having been done in CSGO. Like the stats that he put up over that amount of time on the losing teams. Like this guy was winning MVPs, placing second.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet he was still fucking grinding and playing while his teammates weren't there. Like, I've seen him like shift his mental so much over the years. Like, I just have so much respect for Simple as like a competitor. Like, he's fucking insane. Like, have you seen anything like that? Like on a side note?
No. Here's the thing. Put it this way. He really is like that fucking. You know, everyone knows that cliche where they go, hard work beats talent if talent refuses to work. Like he proves that that's right, Sean, because he has like the most talent and then he worked the hardest of everyone. And like, I agree with you. That's why the joke is, it almost was like indisputed that he was the greatest. Like you would just watch him and the eye test was like, this guy's the best to ever play the game. Like I agree. And like, but I know what you're saying is true as well. He also put in insane hours. Like what you're saying about his mental's even true. Even though I would, like, the joke is, I was like the devil on his fucking shoulder after some of those events, mate. When he would like have an event where he'd lose in the semis, but I thought he was like the best player, I would even try to tell him, like, Dost, these motherfuckers disrespect you, like, you're better than them, like, don't let them tell you you're not that good. But in a way, I actually understand why he had to tell himself, like, no, I can still improve, I could have done more. Because what's fucked up is, it turned out he could. It turned out there was like another level I didn't even know you could access, where like, he just kept trying to level up, even though I thought, I was like, mate, you're already the best, but like, apparently there was still like a top to the mountain we didn't know about, so when he reached it, like, it was unbeatable, yeah.
It's like the clouds this whole time have been a fucking painting, and he just like opened up the hatch and just like climbed up above them. It was like, wait, what? Like, dude, he literally he went to Team Liquid. Like, he came to America to sacrifice everything.
Yes.
Like, this guy like has no quit. I'm telling you, like, I've never seen anything like this. Like, this is insane. Like, he went from being simple the Undertaker to like never saying anything bad about him. Like, his character development has been crazy. Like, yeah, he's the GOAT in my eyes.
Right, here's a question. Who in Valorant would Seangares pick for the best player ever be? Who's, like, obviously it's a younger game, we get that, but like, there's a bunch of names. I'll give a few. People know, like, obviously now everyone's loving Demon One. You could go fucking Tens back in the day. There's a bunch of different names would be out there. Is there someone would stand out for you? Who would you plump for? It could be biased if you want. What would your preference be? Who's your greatest Valorant player?
That's such a fucking hard question, because it is such a new game still. Let me fucking grab this year. Who's the greatest? Demon One is pretty insane, but like, he doesn't have the body of work for me to say that, right? Like,
oh, the Durka. Sorry, there's plenty of names I can throw in, right? There's a lot of good names, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Durka would have to be like up there, right? Like, he has to be up there. But it's kind of like going back. Like, Osboss maybe is like up there as well.
Oh, Loud, yeah, sure. And obviously in Sentinels, yeah.
It's so hard, because the thing with Valorant is like, there's these metas where like, say you're like one-tricking an agent. Like, you know, like CNED was like the best player in like Jet meta, and then like Jet kind of like fell off, and like Chamber came up like really hard, and he kind of like got a little bit quiet for some time this last year. You know, like, that has happened so many times that like, in order for a player to be the GOAT, they would have to literally somehow master like multiple agents immediately.
Yes.
Because of the amount of time that the game's been out. So I don't think we have the vision to say that yet in Valorant.
All right, well, then you've set me up perfectly, because being as I know, unfortunately, the difference is when I do a reflection like this, Sean, people might watch this in 5 years. No one's going to watch, episode 17 of a talk show. Like, no one rewatches that content. So rather than waste it, I'll set you up and we'll see if you're going to say the same thing. You gave me a mad spicy take on that last Valorant show, which is, to be fair, before they'd even done anything in the tournament, you did tell me that you thought that Kangkang and EDG were like the most insane potential in Valorant. In fact, you told me that Kangkang is like the best mechanical player, and he will be like the GOAT or whatever. Or he could be like best player of the world. Do you still stand by that? Is this the player to watch like for the coming years? Is that Seangares' pick for like the potential GOAT? Can he do it?
I think so. I think. I mean, I talked to him after they lost that Champions. I just happened to like run into him outside. It's the first time I talked to him, and just like how devastated he was. It like reminded me of like myself, like in that Cologne day, like, you know, like he said immediately, it's like, I need to work on my mental, like I need to work on myself, and I need to work on myself in like these areas, like this is super important to me. And I was just like, this guy is going to be fucking insane. Just the way those Chinese teams like burst onto the scene this year with so little time playing top teams, so little like vision into the competitive circuit, what it feels like to like play like these top level like Western teams. If you're not a believer in like that region in gaming, like I don't know what you're thinking. Like I just don't get it, because like when I was coaching 100 Thieves at Champions, like like that was like the first time I think like Kangkang played at a tournament, and their team was like so raw. They were in like double duelist chamber. You can't really do much like with those comps. Like they were playing so aggressive. They didn't understand rotations. They didn't even have very good setups, but they were so insane. They were so insane. And they were playing like fucking 10 scrims a day. Like the amount they grind, like they have no quit. I'm telling you, these teams are definitely going to be better than what they were this year for sure. They're definitely going to place higher next year. And I think he's the shining star of the region. So I'm going to like say that like that is most likely. But then it is also likely that like the agents he plays just gets totally fucked. Like that's just the way Valorant goes.
Sure. Right, one last question I do actually have about Valorant goes like this. Another player I want to ask you about is FNS. Now, what's funny is anyone from CS is going to be like, FNS? Like, because you're all thinking like he was just whatever, wasn't he? Like, this is what people don't get. If you're a CS fan and you want to get into Valorant, the one you want to watch, the teams are all of FNS's teams. Because this is the guy who did bring over the CSGO ethos of how to play the game. And quite frankly, I actually think people underrated him in CSGO, mate. I actually thought he was a good IGL in CSGO. Like, he's one of those people where I'm not as surprised he's so good in Valorant, because as far as I know, it's just lack of opportunity that he left CSGO. He wasn't actually like a bad... He's not like when people know that there's like some of the washed players became like stars of Valorant in the early days. Like this guy probably could still be in CSGO now. Like the joke is, if you look at the CSGO teams now, like Team Liquid needs an IGL, he could be the IGL of Team Liquid in CSGO. The guy was just a skilled player, like as from the captain's role, right? What would you say in Valorant? Because I feel like you must vibe with this guy. It feels like he's your sort of an IGL, mate. It's like, it's a lot of like the mid-rounding, the setup, like he clearly tries to find like an anti-strat to the opponent sometimes. It feels like he plays in a lot of the seangares wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of similarities between us. Like he relies a lot on rotations. Like he definitely utilizes his team and like comps really well. We both had stints on like Cloud9. Like his not so long.
His wasn't that long, true. His was a cup of coffee.
I did him dirty. I did him so dirty. That's fucked up. So no, I think he's like literally probably like the best IGL in our entire region, which is sad because he's not going to be in VCT. It looks like next year he's going to go like the content creator route, which is honestly like so understandable. Like knowing everything that I know, like kind of like surface level is everything I've said up until this point, like how hard it is and like how things are constantly changing, how much work you have to put in, like the money in that compared to being an influencer content creator, like especially in like esports winter right now, like I totally get it. Like I totally get it. It just sucks that influence is like leaving pro play right now in our region.
Right, I have to ask this question, even if I think I know the answer, because every fan wants to know, Sean, right? Obviously, you're in Valorant right now, but I don't know if you're aware, there's this game called CS2. It's like the sequel to Counter-Strike. Is there a universe where Sean Gares ever comes back as player or coach or talent, broadcaster, any of them? Will we ever see Sean Gares in CS2, do you think?
I've been playing actually. So like for the first time in like a while, at the start of the off season, I've been playing like a lot of CS2. Like I actually play like most of the nights, not every night because I've been like sick lately. But yeah, I really enjoy playing. But with that said, like I don't know. There's something about like my mindset. Like I feel like it's like a disservice. Like I feel like
you don't want to give up on Valorant?
No, nothing like that. It's like a disservice to CS. Like I respect CS too much to like accept a role like that right now. Like I've actually been
because you're not actually like at the peak. If people haven't noticed, by the way, Sean, just as an aside, I'd like to ask this actually. It seems like a weird thing about you is, are you someone who like you get the validation that you're good from the preparation? Because it sounds like at any time period where you feel like a tall insecure, you feel like I shouldn't do it. Like I have to be all in and I have to be like grinding myself to oblivion. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I don't feel like opportunities have been presented to me in CS, and I don't feel comfortable accepting them because I don't feel like I deserve them because I haven't put the time in to accept those things. And I feel like it is a slap in the face to people that have if I do. And it's not good for the scene if I do. So will I do those things? Like if I feel comfortable mentally and if the opportunities are there, yes, I will do them. But it would take me actually like really putting a lot of time and effort in, feeling comfortable about the things I say. I don't like bullshitting. I'm not like a fluff type person. Like I want to know that what I say is true, and I want to be able to like fight about it. Like if someone contests what I say, like I want to be able to defend what I say. Like I don't just sit here and like bullshit, like I want to feel confident about everything I say, especially if it's on a broadcast. So I'm not like saying it's out of the question. I just think like right now I wouldn't, just because of like, like Ancient, Anubis. Like I haven't watched some of like the recent events that have happened, and because of that, I'm not like in tune with like the meta right now in CS. But I've been playing a lot of CS too, and I am now like understanding this game like pretty high. Like I'm putting effort in to learn, but I'm still far off. Yeah.
What about then if I ask the other one for the Valorant fans, right? If someone's a Valorant fan, seangares is still going to be around in Valorant and you have no plans to leave right now, right? You're still going to use what you have and make content and potentially do some events. You're still going to be like, put it this way, if everything went awesome in Valorant, you could still be in Valorant in 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think both games are going to be around for.
By the way, I think they'll just both coexist, mate. I don't even think they compete with each other. I think it's a different audience, different player base, everything.
Yeah. Like I think CS is like an evergreen game, super easy to understand. Like you could teach your fucking parents how to play this game like with zero knowledge about like anything about gaming. Valorant is giga fucking complex. You know, like you do have a very simple way of being like, hey, like when this team hits, 30 rounds, they win the game. Like this is what happens. But all of the abilities and interactions and what you're watching is insane to explain to someone that has never played Valorant, right? But with that being said, I trust Riot significantly more than Valve when it comes to marketing and when it comes to just like building a game. Like that's like why I think Valorant will never die. Like, it's just like the way Riot handles this shit, like the content they create around the game to push it, like how announcements are like timed and spaced and crafted and worded. It's all like to perfection. Like the way the game is designed is like in mind with like what the younger generation would want. And like they're constantly thinking about these things. Whereas like when it comes to CS, it's like, we don't want to change like this formula, and this formula works and we're going to stick with it. And that's good too. That's good too. I'm not saying that's bad. Like that's why CS isn't going to go anywhere. Like if CS tried to play Valorant's game with their current makeup, like they wouldn't win the game. Like I don't know. Like I think in my eyes, like I don't know. Like do I think Valorant is going to be like League with like hundreds of characters? Probably one day. Maybe not that many, but I don't know. I mean, you've seen both of these developers. Like one of them has like 1 million employees and the other has like 12.
It's like the totally polar opposite approach. Yeah, exactly.
They couldn't be any different. Like, I don't know. Like one of them has like full control over the esports circuit and like wants to literally determine everything that's happening. And the other one's just like, we don't care. Like do whatever you want, but wait, actually that's not okay. Let's release a ruling right now. Like that's how Valve operates. But they can operate that way because of what Counter-Strike is and the community and the fact that they have like an open API that people can build off of. Like it's totally different products. It's so weird.
Yes. Right. At the end of this interview, Sean, do you have a final message for people? Is there anyone you want to thank or say hello to?
No, just like thanks to all like the fans that have like stuck by me throughout like all this time. Like it's crazy because like having been in both games, even going like to champions as like broadcast talent and doing like meet and greets and stuff, like there's so many people that came up that were like, yo man, like I fell in love with you from like like the CS days and stuff. And that's so insane to me that like people have like followed me like through all these years and have like supported the things I do. And it just means a lot. So yeah, just thanks to all of those people. Thanks to Shopify. I think they're like an amazing org. That's who I'm with right now as like a content creator. They are doing like all the right things in my opinion in esports and like how they handle things. And I am very optimistic about Shopify as an org, like just a total tangent.
Yeah, there you go. All good. I'll cut it there. To paraphrase the legendary DMX, I just love when y'all in my Patreon crew give me a bigger piece of cake to chew a hole through. Because obviously, one of the ways I'm able to support myself and make content like I do on this channel is thanks to my Patreon community and the likes of Ahmed Haju, Frisky, Matt Pugnaccio Racula, Animosity, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and always a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. opinion? Do you want to ask a question in my video AMA? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest to interview? Maybe you want teasers, find out who I've already interviewed in upcoming episodes. Or do you want to take part in one of those lengthy online discussions that I do with my top patrons? Well, if any of these perks or more appeal to you, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link below.